Hello there. I'm Dr. Autumn, leadership consultant, wellness coach, author, and I'm incredibly grateful to be your host of the Align Living podcast. I'm here to equip you with the tools, inspiration, and practical tips necessary to lead a life of wholeness and pursue greater shalom in your life and that of your families, teams, and communities. My mission is to empower you to lead from a place of holistic well-being. It's time to say peace out to the fatigue, fog, and frustration of living in a place that lacks abundant well-being. Join me as we embark on a comprehensive exploration of spiritual, physical, mental, emotional, social, and economic well-being, all within the comforting embrace of one podcast. Welcome, Dr. Ray, to the show. I'm just so excited to have you here.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited too.
Awesome. So I know we have so many things to talk about today that I'm just really excited to jump into, but I just want to give listeners just a little bit of background about you. So Dr. Ray here, he did his undergrad in exercise science and kinesiology, and then obviously his doctorate in chiropractic care. But what I really wanted to share with you guys, and one of the reasons I value so much being under his care as well, but also just the way that he's helping clients, is because he specifically emphasizes the neurology of the human body. And what I mean by that is just he looks at the body as this holistic being, which those of you who've been listening to the show know how passionate I am about that. So he's really able to distinguish his patients' ailments, and I like how he says dis-ease by utilizing a special chiropractic technique called applied kinesiology, which I am a big nerd about. I think it's just fascinating. And so he understands that the human body must be well balanced and well regulated in our mental, physical, and nutritional components in order to reach optimal health and well-being. So, and really his passion is just to bring chiropractic and holistic health to his community. And that's just been a lifelong endeavor. And so some of those words you heard, you can imagine why I asked him to be a guest on the show, because obviously, you know, Align Living is all about integrated wellness and how we need to look at ourselves as holistic beings in this pursuit of wholeness, which is what the show is all about. So that's just a little bit about him. Now I'm going to give you like a quick little insight here personally, and then I'm going to jump right in with my first question, which I'm really excited for y'all to hear. So you might be thinking that I asked him on this show because chiropractic care is all about the spine and total body alignment and whatnot. But the show's Align Living after all, and about finding alignment in our lives. But actually, as I got to know Dr. Ray, he's as disciplined with his daily rhythms to support total body alignment as I am. And I had mentioned in a previous episode that I was going to talk about some of my specific rhythms I've integrated into my life to support my wellness in this pursuit of wholeness. So actually, that was a big reason I wanted to have him here, is to talk about some of his rhythms or practical ways you can even use just small chunks of time in your life to integrate some practices that will support your overall wellness. So, so Dr. Ray, I would love for you to share with us maybe your top 3 practices that you do on a daily basis, or at least a pretty regular basis, and how it impacts your overall alignment or wellness.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me, Autumn. It's a pleasure being here. This is actually my first podcast ever, so I'm super excited. Top 3 practices in my life that allows me to be in alignment throughout the day is 1, meditation. I can't go a day without meditation. I know a lot of people, whenever I talk about meditation, it's like woo woo. Oh, I tried meditation, it doesn't work. But I look at meditation and I look at the brain as sort of like a muscle. When you go to the gym for the first time, you're not going to go to a gym and pick up a 45-pound dumbbell and start curling it, right? So when I started meditation, it's just like, okay, let me start with 30 seconds of sitting here and focusing on my breath. And I'm not gonna lie, the first couple weeks it was the hardest thing ever. My mind was racing, especially someone who has ADHD and OCD. That's kind of the reason why I started to get into meditation, because I'm like, okay, what can I do to focus my mind and focus my brain instead of taking medication? So that's how I got into meditation. And living in California and in the Bay Area, there's a lot of people that got into meditation. So I
I
surrounded
bet.
myself with people who are very spiritual, and people who are, has been lifelong meditators.
Mm,
So I kind of learned from them. So, long story short, meditation is my main
mm,
practice when it comes to alignment, and that's number one. That's the alignment of the mind, and then number three is physical. So physically, I have a lot of practices. Like you said, I'm very disciplined when it comes to my health. If you see my schedule and my calendar, I have everything to the minute and to the hour.
mm.
So I like to practice in blocks. So when I look at physical, I have my physical health, but under that, I have subcategories to my physical health. So the first one, of course, is working out, going to the gym, making sure my body is strong. The other one is nutritional. Our nutrition is not only good for the mind, but it's also good for the body and good for our physical health. So I have subcategories for my nutrition. What do I need to eat? Smoothies, salads, blueberries, anything natural, any supplements that I need in order to keep my nutritional balance, I guess, healthy. And then the other one is, flexibility, yoga, Pilates, all of that. And again, I schedule this. I take every Sunday, and I plan out my week and how I can, focus on my physical and mental health. And then the last one is spiritual. What can I do? People think that spiritual is just prayer, which I do, but also connecting with nature, connecting with your family. For me, with my wife, connecting with my dogs. I take them out for a run, or I take them out for to go to the dog park, walking for going on walks. But yeah, those three are my main three categories to keep myself in alignment: mental, physical, and spiritual.
I love that. So, we are th- through past and future episodes, I'm, continuing to do a deeper dive in like nutrition and fitness and spiritual formation and stuff like that. But what I would love for you, if you don't mind, to expand on just a little bit, because you have this expertise with the nervous system. You talked about meditation,
Mhm.
and I know we like live just. I'm actually going to touch on this later in the interview, but just these like high stress times. What physiologically does it do for the body? If some listeners are like, okay, I've heard that it's really good, but what is it like physiologically doing to the body that you think is like, this is why it's like so good for us?
Yeah, absolutely. Physiologically, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the nervous system. We have two sides of the nervous system. We have sympathetic and parasympathetic. Sympathetic, of course, is fight or flight. When we're in a high stress situation, our sympathetic nervous system starts to go on overdrive, which is very important in our body. It allows us to be alert of everything when we're driving. When you're giving a presentation, you need to focus, and that's where the sympathetic nervous system comes. But a lot of time, especially nowadays, we're in a high stress environment where in certain scenarios where your body needs to be on the opposite side of the nervous system, which is called parasympathetic, which is rest and relax. It's really hard to transition between sympathetic and parasympathetic. And so when you take the time to meditate, it allows you to switch over to the other side of your brain, the other side of your nervous system, which is your parasympathetic nervous system. And I guess, long story short, um, that parasympathetic nervous system allows your body to heal from a physiologic standpoint. It allows your hippocampus, which is the memory part of your brain, to activate a lot easier. and it allows to shut down your amygdala. Amygdala is your stress response in your brain. It sends out cortisols. It sends out a lot of stress chemicals throughout your body when you're in sympathetic nervous system or a
Hmm.
sympathetic overdrive.
Hmm.
So allowing our body to switch to parasympathetic through meditation really helps you to relax and really helps you to go through day without being so nervous all the time.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, that's so important because one thing I realized just through, my more stressful seasons of life is sometimes we don't even realize our body is in that like kind of like high stress state and what's actually happening. And so I think every single person could benefit from these types of practices. So, and then it probably goes without saying, but I'll just add that deep breathing and meditation to me just like go hand in hand because the values of deep breathing are very much in line with what you're talking about. So, just to kind of expand there, though, I want to ask you about some common symptoms I hear about, and just get some of your recommendations, right? Because a lot of this is connected, right? And one thing that you say in your bio is you love getting to the root cause of things. Like that was one of the things that set you down your path, and that's something I'm so passionate about too. So I kind of want to dig in a little bit there. So I heard some crazy stat that like 90% of health issues are in some way connected to toxic stress. When I heard that, I'm like, oh my goodness, it's not like the only cause, but it's connected in some way.
Yep.
So obviously that's connected to our nervous system. And then, you probably hear and see things all the time, like people talking about like muscle tension or headaches or, chronic pain of some sort. So in addition to meditation, what would you say are some like practical ways or some like daily practices that people could do just to manage stress well? Because I'm convicted now in this season of my life, we
Yeah.
don't avoid stress, we learn how to manage it in healthy ways, and that will better impact your well-being. So what are some other things that people could do, let's say, that might be complaining about some of those other symptoms?
Um, this might be a little, I don't know, if you would say woo wee, but I don't know if you guys are familiar with Dr. Joe Dispenza. He's a neuroscientist who really focuses on the neurology of our health. So he again he's really into meditation, but he takes it a step further where he focuses on visualization, visualizing your health where your optimal health. Like let's say if you have lupus, or let's say if you have asthma, understanding that these organs in our body, whether it's our lungs or our autoimmune system, it's all controlled by a nervous system. But if you can visualize yourself, again, sitting down, meditating, first you got to learn the skill of meditation. Once you learn the skill of meditation, you implement visualization to allow your body or to allow your mind. It's kind of like a brain body connection. So to allow your mind to see yourself in a optimal state of health, if that makes sense. So
Hmm.
putting into practice, sorry, I'm sitting in my balcony, there's some UPS just sitting there.
Hey, it's
uh,
life, it's fine.
yeah. So visualizing yourself, this is what I do as well. So when I meditate, I visualize myself, be like, okay, what's the strongest form of health that I can do throughout my day in order to keep myself healthy. So that's where, exercising, going on walks, nutrition, all of that plays into account in order to get myself to that optimal state of health.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think sometimes too, like I would add that when we're stressed, sometimes we don't feel like doing all the other things, and that's when it's like most important to like
Yeah.
drink water and get that smoothie in or do whatever else. So I remember when you first told me about Dr. Joe, and I'm actually a big fan of Dr. Anita Phillips as well,
Yep.
and I'm like totally nerding out on this whole concept of vagal tone. And I know that you talked about the parasympathetic nervous system already.
Yep.
But what is so cool to me about kind of how you're talking about things is, people say, okay, I want to get healthier. I want to be toned, like physically. Let's say they want their arms, summertime, they want their arms, their legs to like
Yeah.
muscular, be more toned. But you had mentioned at the beginning about your brain being a muscle, and And when we talk about vagal tone, this is like improving our the well-being, like the fitness, if you will, of some of these essential parts of our nervous system. So I think, it's almost like, instead of, and what you've also continued to help me realize is, it's so easy to look on the outside, but remembering, like, we have all of these pieces on the inside that we need to be intentional about their quote unquote like fitness level of, like, how things are internally. And so um, I think it might be cool, because I found it fascinating for listeners to hear a little bit more on, like, what vagal tone is, and some things that people could do to intentionally improve in that space, since it's literally, I feel like, connected to so many things.
Yeah. So polyvagal tone is your vagus nervous system is the longest nerve that connects from your brain all the way down to your organ. And poly means multiple, right? So these nerves coming from your brain goes to multiple areas in your organ, whether it's your heart, whether it's your lungs, whether it's your intestines. So we need those organs to work properly. But when we're in a hypersympathetic state, uh, that vagus nerve causes a cascade of internal reaction throughout our body, whether it's faster heartbeat, whether it's shallow breathing, whether it's indigestion. That's all controlled by our vagus nervous system, right? Which is why it's connected to chiropractic, because um, the most important vertebrae in our spine is our atlas, our C1, and our vagus nerve is closely related to our atlas, the very top vertebrae in our spine. So imagine if when your spine or when your atlas shifts out of place, that can cause a cascade of sympathetic reaction throughout our body. So there's a lot of technologies out there within chiropractic that can measure your sympathetic nervous system. Specifically, it's called a. It's been a while since I've used this technology. Heart rate variability.
Mhm.
So it's called the heart rate variability. So it measures your sympathetic nervous system, and if you've ever used a heart rate variability, it shows you whether you're in the green, which you're in more of a parasympathetic state, or if you're in the red, where you're more in the sympathetic state. So what we do in chiropractic is we measure that. So after an adjustment in your atlas, you check your nervous system, and it shows that before you get adjusted, you're at that sympathetic state. But after
Mhm.
you get adjusted, you're closer to the parasympathetic, the green area. So essentially, the goal of going back to your question on them, the goal of getting, allowing for a healthier polyvagal tone is pretty much trying to get more towards that parasympathetic state, because if you're in the parasympathetic state in your nervous system, then your organs can work properly. Your heart can slow down, you can breathe a little bit better, and your entire body can function better.
Hmm. That's okay. This alone is so fascinating to me. And if you're listening, you're like, oh my gosh, this is so interesting. Like, literally, you could Google how to improve your vagal tone, and you'll get this like long list of things that are not that hard to do. They're things that you could just integrate into, like, you get in your car, remember to do some like really like deep breathing. And actually, I think I might have to correct myself in the show notes, but even like singing, there's like certain things that could like improve your vagal tone. Like, even if you're a horrible singer like me, if I'm in the kitchen cooking, I'm listening to some positive music and singing along. Like, it's so fascinating to me that, you know,
Even
they're
going
the
on
way.
hikes. Sorry, I don't mean to
No,
interrupt.
no, no, yeah, nature hikes.
Going on hikes. I love going on hikes, being in nature, connecting with nature. Just doing that on the weekends, like that helps with polyvagal tonality. Exercise, going for runs. There's a myriad of things you can do in order to optimize your vagal tone.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so crazy to me that it impacts so many things, and yet there's like some simple solutions that bring us joy. Like, oh, like, my face is really important to me, so I just love thinking about like how our bodies were created even in this way to counter, the stress in the world with some simple things to like heal ourselves. So it's just fascinating. So anyways, just so kind of switching gears a little bit though, because I feel like, you know, if someone's trying to live a quality, like a good life, but they're feeling all this like tightness and chronic pain. I feel like almost everyone has some sort of imbalances muscularly and whatnot. Like, and truth be told, this is why I'm a fan of functional training, because we're mobile people, right? We're mobile. We have to use our bodies to function, to do just daily activities, and so many people are often so imbalanced. And you know, what's the negative impact on our bodies when we're doing these day-to-day tasks while so imbalanced? And then, you know, what are, because I think sometimes there's not a sense of urgency around it, because people are like, oh, I could just live with that, I'm just used to waking up feeling a certain way, or I'm used to like having to compensate to do simple tasks. So, you know, what are maybe some of the long-term negative impacts of living with your body imbalanced? And then what are some things we can do just to create better balance in our bodies? However you want to answer this, whether it's like simple like exercises or other things that people could do just to bring more balance to their bodies. And feel free to touch on posture as well.
Yeah. No, that's a good question. Well, answer your first question.
Mhm.
One, if your body is imbalanced with whether mental, physically, spiritually, I think deterioration in your body.
Mhm.
Um, let's say 1 week you're like, oh, I'm just gonna live with this. Your body is fine. Imagine you're doing that for a whole year or years. Deterioration, not only physically but mentally too. And I'm definitely trying to do better with my parents, because my parents have that same excuse of like, oh, I'm just old, I'm just gonna live with it. And I just get so pissed off whenever they tell me that. I'm like, no, here's an 80-year-old woman who's doing burpees and pull-ups, and she's 20 years older than you. Like, you have no excuse.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, one thing is to take it easy on yourself if you really want to get back into a more aligned state of living. Understand that everyone starts somewhere, right? If you're starting from scratch, just focus on one thing. I read a book called The One Thing. I forgot who the author is, but The One Thing really resonated with me, because before I was all over the place. I was
Mm-hmm.
doing, when you own your own practice, you own your own business, you're doing everything all at once, and that can cause you to be super overwhelmed, put you in that sympathetic state. So just recently, actually, when I read the book, The One Thing, I just focused on one thing. When it comes to alignment, I tell myself, what's one thing I can do today to improve my mental health? Whether it's breathing, whether it's going for a walk, whatever it is. And then reward yourself. Be like, all right, I did this today. Let's try tomorrow. And then what's one thing I can do in order to improve my physical health? All right, let's go to the gym. Doesn't even have to be a crazy hard workout. Do 10 push ups. That's it. So I mean, for an easy answer for that, it's just do one thing in order to get yourself balanced, and that will create a habit throughout your life. The goal here is not to do everything all at once. The goal here is to try to create a habit in your life so that it's more of a lifestyle to living more aligned instead of a chore.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So when you give me a packet of 75 exercises to do, I shouldn't do them all. I should
Yep.
look and pick the top three that are I'm actually going to actually put into practice and do those consistently and
Yep.
form those habits.
I tell
Yeah.
my patients all the time when I give
Yeah.
them those exercise packet, especially my older patients, I'm like, look, I know you don't work out that much, so let's make a deal. Just do 1 page a day and then get into the habit of doing those exercises.
Yeah.
Instead of just like throwing the packet underneath the bed with like, they're like, oh, what exercise?
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, that's such a good life practice, because how many times do we have like something thrown at us and we're completely overwhelmed? And I think we go into this like paralysis state of like, feeling just so wildly overwhelmed. And if we could step back and just like do one thing, whether it's like a life goal, like a business goal, or something you're trying to accomplish with your kids, or like a relationship thing, whatever it might be, I think it's just such a good life practice. So we'll try to find that title of the author of that book, and I'll put it in the show notes. But Anyways, I wanted to wrap up with one last question. I literally, I feel like what's so funny is, Dr. Ray's a chiropractor, but like I feel like I could probably randomly ask him about anything related to health, and I'll know stuff about it. So that's why we went off on all these directions, but it's really great. So I know, speaking of people being overwhelmed, I just with the work that I've done in leadership development and health coaching, I feel like folks are feeling like I have so much going on and they're trying to prioritize like what to do and feeling like they just don't have enough time for it all. I would love to hear just, what's a word of encouragement or a life lesson besides like the one thing that was really good. I didn't know you were going there with that, but what's something else, if you had just like a word of encouragement or a life lesson that you could leave listeners with who are like, I want to do better. I want to feel better, but I'm feeling a bit like overwhelmed, like I'm drowning a little bit, like just coming up for some air here and there. Like what would you say?
I would say give yourself a break.
Hmm.
Don't be so hard on yourself. For me specifically, I used to be really hard on myself. If I don't accomplish one thing in the morning or in the week, I used to beat myself so much to a point where
Hmm.
gave me a lot of anxiety and depression. But of course, set goals when it comes to your health and everything in life, but don't be so hard on yourself if you don't accomplish that at the time frame that you wanted it to be,
Hmm.
right? Because the main thing when it comes to your health is, again, try to be in balance with, again, mind, body, spirit. And you can't do that if you're in a high stress environment, whether internally or externally. So really consciously tell yourself, be like, hey, this is okay. Like on Sundays, my wife always gets upset at me on this, but I would tell myself like, okay, let me just relax on Sunday. I don't need to do any work. I just need to relax, whether it's go out with the dogs, hang out, or just watch TV, because throughout the week you have so much going on. You need to be aware that this is, I guess, be aware that you're putting so much on your plate that you need to have time for yourself, and you need to forgive yourself for not, or like trying to come back, sorry. You need to be aware that you're doing so much for your in your life that forgiving yourself for not accomplishing a certain aspect in your life is not the end of the world, and you can come back and reset and try to do something different, if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. Like basically I feel like what you're saying is like move forward but with grace, because I have an intense self-critic, and so I can relate to what you're saying. Like everyone's personality is different. People kind of got to navigate like where they feel like their weaknesses might be. But yeah, if you're feeling overwhelmed, like, you got to keep moving forward, but
Mhm.
with grace, and
Right.
be mindful of that self-critic because it can be harsh. And I think you mentioned this about earlier on about the importance of connection. I think this is why it's good to have people in your life who could support you on your journey. And so I always end each episode with Coach Autumn's practice of the day, because practice does not make perfect, practice makes permanent. And so I actually wasn't sure what tip I wanted to leave, because there's so many like practical nuggets throughout this. Just kind of wanted to leave listeners to challenge themselves maybe on how they might want to improve their vagal tone or what they might want to do. But actually, my tip for the day is to make sure you're engaging community on this journey. To be honest, it feels a little unexpected, but I feel like I was just telling someone the other day, I had embarked down this, like, I wanted to start doing this storytelling practice to capture things. And it was this homework for life. And you're supposed to just take like 1 or 2 minutes a day to jot down something interesting that happened that day. It could be mundane, but with like some aha moment that you had or something. And I was doing it so consistently when I had an accountability partner. And then I'm like, no, we're good now. I think we could do it. We don't have to check in every day. And then sure enough, like within like a week, wasn't doing it consistently. And so maybe there is a practice from what you learned, like a rhythm you want to integrate to help with your stress management or something, I encourage you to find an accountability partner. Do it in community, because it is amazing how powerful that is. And community itself is good for our stress management and good for our overall wellness. And so that is my tip for you all. And I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did. I wanted to wrap up, Dr. Ray, by asking you to share with us where, and I'll put this in the show notes, so, for listeners, but where can people find you? Like, Instagram, your website, where do you want people to find you?
Well, we do have a website. It's called soundchiropractic.co, not .com, .co. That's our chiropractic and wellness website. But if you'd like to see the silly side of me or of our office, our Instagram page is called sound_chiro. Sound_chiro. That's our Instagram page. We have educational stuff on those on our Instagram, and we also have funny stuff that we do in our office as well. So definitely check us out.
Perfect. That's awesome. Okay, I will put that website and your Instagram both in the show notes. And I'm really active on Instagram. I can't believe I'm not following you. So as soon as
Yeah,
we
you should
finish up
follow me.
here, I know as soon as we finish here, I'm going to go on and give you a follow. And thank you so much for sharing, taking some time with us, and sharing with us some of your personal rhythms and just convictions of, where this is coming from. And for people who just kind of are curious about, chiropractic care in general, like, my recommendation, depending on where you live, I mean, Dr. Ray's in Northern Virginia, but it's always good to find somebody who values the whole body and how it works together, as a system, because I think, like, as you can see, so many things that are going on are have multiple, multiple causes or multiple things that are affecting that goal. So anyways, well, I hope you all have an amazing day. And thank you, Dr. Ray, again for being on the show.
Thank you again for having me, Autumn. Take care.
Thank you for tuning in to the Aligned Living Podcast. I'm Dr. Autumn, your guide on this journey to shalom or wholeness. Ready to embark on this journey of self-discovery and transformation? Head over to autumnswain.com to learn more and to dive deeper into the world of aligned living. Until next time, stay aligned.